Hey, how's it going, everyone? So today we're going to be working on part 3 of the Making Our Music app series, and today we're going to be hooking things up with Firebase. So here we have our finished product. As you can see, we have our first album and second album, and these different songs applied to them. Now, this looks nothing different, but all of this stuff is actually being loaded from Firestore now. And so this is what we hope to accomplish in this video. So hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. All right, so for this part of the application, we need to actually connect this up with Firebase. So in order to do this, let's go to firebase.google.com. And if you don't already have an account, go ahead and create that account. But if you do have an account, just go to your console. And once you're inside of your console, just go ahead, add a project. I'm going to call this project my music app. And then we go ahead and continue here. Select an account. I already have this account, creating your project. All right, and now that our project is ready, we can go ahead and hit continue. And from here, you can already see like add an app to get started. So we're going to be working with an iOS application, of course. And so let's go ahead and enter in our bundle ID. So this was the thing that you set up immediately when you first created the application. Mine is architap.musicapp. But you would just copy that, put that right in there. Your app nickname, this is optional, but I'm just going to go ahead and put it as music app. And then the App Store ID, this really only is when your application is out on the App Store. Then once you have that, you go ahead and register the application. Let's go ahead and download the Google service plist here. And then once you have that, you're going to click and drag that right into your application. Copy items if needed, make sure that is checkmarked so that it actually recognizes it. And then mine copied with this too. If that does happen, just make sure it's Google service-info.plist, not with any 1 or 2 at the end, because typically that'll mess something up. Then once we're here, we need to go ahead and install a pod file. So if you guys don't know about CocoaPods, you want to go to cocoapods.org. And this is basically a place where you can download and install a bunch of like frameworks. And this is what Firebase uses to actually get Firebase connected with your own application. And so it's very important. So once you have CocoaPods installed, you can head back here. And then we want to say, create a pod file if you don't have one. So the way that we do this is first this pod init, right? So let's go over to the terminal. Let's say here, we'll say ls to see where we are, cd, and then we're going to go to the desktop because that's where I saved my file, and then cd, and then we're going to be looking for the music app. And then once we're inside of this file, you should be able to see everything, and we say pod init. Then once we have the pod initialized, let's go ahead and open up our folder, and you should be able to see that we have a new thing called a pod file right inside of our project. And so from here, this is where we can start adding some pods from Firebase into our own application. So first off, they recommend doing like the Firebase Analytics, but for other pods, you want to go ahead and grab this part right here, this URL, and go up to here and search for that. And you should be able to see all of the different pod files that we can actually install. So I'm going to be using the pod Firestore. And so right under this pods for music app, we just go ahead, paste that right in there, pod Firebase Firestore. And then I'm also going to be using the Firebase storage. This is how we're going to be storing, our images and whatnot. So copying that, pasting that there, and we're good to go. We don't really need to worry about maybe authentication or anything like that, because I believe that we won't have any signing in or anything like that. And so I think we're okay. And so once you have those in there, hit Command S to save the file. Then we say pod install. And now you can see that these things are installing. Now, while it's doing that, go ahead and close out of your Xcode project. And this is because, as you can see, once everything is said and done, it creates this musicapp.xc workspace. And so we're going to be working with this from now on, because this is what holds the pod files and the frameworks that we're going to be using, such as the Firebase stuff and all the stuff that correlates with that. So going back into our music app here, we should be able to now reference Firebase inside of our application. So if we were to say import Firebase, it should recognize that now. Firebase, Firebase Core, Firebase Storage, and so on. If it doesn't recognize it, try building and running your application, and then type in import Firebase, and that should hopefully fix it. So going back here, we need to finish up our installation. So first off, instead of our app delegate, now this has kind of changed because We don't really use our app delegate here. And so from here, this is where we're going to go into our music app. And within the initializer, we're going to say init. And then, okay, so first off, we need to import Firebase. And then down here, instead of our initializer, we say Firebase app.configure. All right, so now the app has built and ran, and we should be able to see that reflecting over into here, showing that we have installed everything correctly. Oh, and so maybe it's because we haven't implemented the analytics part. And so maybe that's what we need to do. So let's go ahead and copy the pod for the Firebase analytics. And let's just see if that may or may not be the issue. So going back into our pod file, let's copy and paste that stuff in there. Hit Command S, and then we're going to go to terminal and do just what we did before. And also it's good to keep in mind that you'll have to come back to this pod file every now and then to say pod update. That way you can always be up to date and that there will be no crashes and all that jazz. So according to the console, it does look like everything is actually working the way that it should. Firebase Analytics is showing to have a few errors. Oh, there you go. So congratulations, you've successfully added Firebase to your application. Nice. So now we can continue to our console, and this is where we can start working with things. So first off, I want to start adding the albums. This is what our main goal for today is. I want to add these albums into the cloud here. And so let's go ahead and start that. So we're going to start in production mode real quick, and then go into, yep, that's fine by me. And this is where we're going to start adding some documents and collections into our Firestore. So our first collection here is we're going to have the albums. Then inside of here, we're going to have a specific ID for each one of these documents. So these are like the different albums. So for this one, I'm going to call this album 1, you know? And then inside of here, we're going to add a couple fields. So first off, the name, right? The name of album 1 is going to be first album. Love it. Okay. Then we go ahead and add another field. And going back into our application here, we should be able to see the different variables that we want, right? So we have the name, the image. This ID is still going to be like a random ID, so we're not going to put an ID in there. The ID is going to be generated locally rather than on the cloud. And then, yeah, the image is the main thing. So for the image right now, let's go ahead and just make it so it's an empty string at the moment, but we'll figure this out in a little bit. And then we need to work with the song as well. So we're going to have to add another collection inside of this document, but we'll worry about that in just a second. So as you can see, now we have albums 1, and then underneath this, we're going to have to add another collection. So this is going to be my songs. I guess it could be songs in this case. So first off, how do we grab this information? So we need to go ahead and let's create a new file. This is going to be my data file. So I'm going to just call this data. And then inside of here, this is where we're going to be handling all of the data coming in and out of the application. So we're going to call this import SwiftUI. And then we say class data, or not capital data. So let's call this the I'll call this our data. I don't know. And then we're going to call this an observable object. So inside of our data here, we basically want this to be kind of a public version of what we already did with our albums here, right? So I'm going to copy this albums just so that we can get some dummy data in there. And we're going to copy that and just paste that right in here. And so now we have albums. Now this should actually be at published public var albums, like so. And that way any view inside of our application can actually read this data. And now if you were to build and run this, you would obviously see that there would be some issues, some errors popping up because now this albums does not exist. So what we need to do is create an observed object. So observed object var, and then this is going to be my data. And then we'll say colon, and then it will be expecting what? Our data to be put inside of there. And then anywhere that we call self.albums like we were doing before, we actually now want it to say self.data.albums. albums. And then we're going to do the same thing with this other one down here. self.data.albums, like so. And this one too. So this last one here is self.data.albums.first with an exclamation mark. And that should fix any and all of the issues that we had before. Now, building and running this, you would still see a couple issues. First off, I'm going to delete the previews because we won't be needing them anymore. So if you were to build and run this, you would see another issue, is that we don't have an observed object when we call the content view. So going back here into our music app file, we need to actually pass through what? Our data object. Now, I don't want to just call this here, because another thing that I do want to do is actually load data when we actually create the application. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to say let data equal our data, open close parentheses, like so. Then we feed that right into there. But what this allows us to do is actually say data dot, and then we can call certain functions from that data. So going back into the our data structure here, we can start messing with things and actually loading up some data. So I'm going to say func load data, or let's make this a little bit more specific. Let's say func load albums. And then inside of here, first off, I need to import Firebase, which should automatically include Firebase storage. And then we say Firestore.Firestore with parentheses. Then we say dot collection, in which we're going into our albums collection. And then we're going to observe all of the albums that are inside of that. So we're going to say dot get documents, in which we have our snapshot and an error passing through. So we're going to say if the error is equal to nil, then we don't do anything. Otherwise, we're going to do something. So if we do have an error, we want to print out what our error is. But if we don't have an error, we actually just want to break up the data and do what we can. So first off, I'm going to say print snapshot, just to get us rolling. And so now when the app loads, I'm going to actually be able to see all this stuff. So we can say data.load albums. So upon the loading of the application, we should be able to see inside of our console all of the data coming through that's inside of Firestore at the moment. Okay, so it says right here that we are missing, or we have insufficient permissions. So if it does give you that issue, all you need to do is go back to your rules inside of your Cloud Firestore and you say allowed read write if true. So ideally, it's actually better to not have it just as true for both the read and the write. For read, that might be okay, but for the write, no. So you can mess with this later, but right now we're just going to leave it as is. But we did get a snapshot coming through, and so we're good on that. Okay, so one of the things that I did notice is that inside of here, we can't actually grab the sub-collections of a document within Swift or Objective-C or the web, or any of these. We can really do it within like Java and Python and some of these other languages here. But yeah, so we can't organize our data that way. So we're going to have to find a workaround. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete the songs collection from within that document, and we're going to add a field. And so inside of this field, it's going to be a map. And then inside of this, there's going to be another map. It's basically like having a collection inside of a collection, but it's just kind of like a data map of sorts. So first off, this is going to be what? My songs. Then we have song 1, and of course the name of the song. So I'm going to call this song 1. And then we also have the time, which is of course going to be 2:36 or something. And so that's going to be song 1. Let's go ahead and add that in there, and then we should be able to add within our songs here some more information. So let's add another field. This is of course going to be another map. So this makes the process a tad bit more complicated, but it's nothing that really gets in the way. And so this is going to be song, or this is number 2, right? Then we have the name of this, which is going to be song 2. Then we add a field to that. That's going to be time. And then this is going to be 2:36. And then maybe in the future of this project, you actually want to have something that actually automates this, and like you can upload it from the application itself. But for now, we're just doing this all manually, and that's why it's kind of a tedious process, but it does the job. Okay, so now that we have the image, the name, the songs, we can start breaking all of these up into their various parts. So first off, we're going to have, the way that we do this is we say let name equal document dot data, and then data, as you can see, if we click on this, it is a dictionary. So we can just go ahead and put some brackets after that and start accessing some information. So we already know that we're going to have name, and then this is, we're going to be as a string. If I could type. Nope, apparently not. And then this is going to be a fallback of just like an empty string there. And we're going to put this as like air or something. And then we need to do this exact same thing. We're going to copy this, paste that, and then we just need to have this for the time. So we have the time, air, this is of course going to be time. And then what we need to do is iterate through all of our songs. So we're going to say let songs equal document dot data, and then this is going to be songs as, and then this is going to be basically a map here. So we're going to have a string. And so basically, as you can see, as we have our songs here, it's basically a string, and then inside of this we have a string and then an any. So we can kind of say string colon and then another array for string colon any. And then this is where we can start breaking into our songs a little bit. So we can say for song in songs. So another thing that I'm seeing right now is it doesn't allow you to do a for in loop if it's an optional. So just to make sure that we're going to have songs in this for statement, we're going to say if let songs equal songs, then we can go through and do this for statement. And that'll just make sure that we don't have any issues or errors as we're going through. And so now we can start breaking up the certain values and whatnot of each of these songs as well. So it's pretty cool. So we can say song dot and then we say value, and we can start breaking up these ones. So we can say the name, and then we say as a string, and then if that doesn't work, we return as an error. And then we just need to do the same thing for the time. And of course we need to do the same thing here. So we're going to say let song name equal, and then we're going to say let song time equal. And now instead of having this fixed information, we should be able to take all of this information and actually load it into our album. So how are we going to do this? We're actually going to say albums. And another thing is we do have the image here. So let me see if I can also add that in here. We're not going to actually put like an actual URL for an image at the moment, but we're going to use one of our local images. So we can go ahead and put in here image, and then the value will be 1. And then that should work with our album. And so going back down here, we should be able to say the same thing. So we can say let not our, and that also made me realize that we don't need this time here. Okay, let image equal document dot data, in which we have the image as a string, or else we return 1. So now we're iterating through all of the images and everything seems to be okay. Now it's just giving us all these errors because we are not using these variables that we have created. So now let's start using these variables. So at the end here, let's go ahead and say let our songs array equal an array of our songs, right? So this is going to be kind of what we did here. So this is going to be an array of songs. Okay, now it's saying this is never used. So now all we need to do is right after we grab all this information, we say self dot song, or not self actually, just say songs array dot append, in which we're going to append a song, and we're going to feed it some information. So this is going to be my name, or song name, and my song time. And also this is not a let variable, this is actually a mutable one, so make sure it says var songs array. Then at the end here we say self.albums.append, in which we're going to append a new album, and this is going to have my name, my image, and the songs. So first off, with the songs, this is going to be my songs array. For the name here, this is going to be my name, and then the image is going to be the image that we loaded up. And so now that's going to load the album and put it directly into here. And so now we should be able to start using this information inside of our application. Let's build and run this, and let's see how it looks. Actually, let's cancel that real quick because we also need to make sure that this is an empty array here. So we say let album, open close parentheses, like so. Now, as we build and run this, let's check out how that would look. Okay, so as you can see, it did give us an error. So our self.data.albums.first, we need to start working with these optionals a little bit better. So we used to have it so we had like fixed data, so we could do this. But now we don't really have that opportunity. So we can go ahead and just, around here, we say if self.data.albums.first is equal to nil, meaning that there's nothing inside of the albums here, then we do something. Otherwise, we revert to this. And that should fix any of the issues that we were seeing in the first place. Now, what do we put in space of this? Let's just put an empty view. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get the same exact issue with something up here, but let's just see if that works. Okay, but we load up. We have the first album, and we have song 1 and song 2, and they are there, and they are loaded up. Nice. One of the things that I do notice, though, is the image is not loading up correctly. So what could possibly be happening with that? But it does say first album, so we know that we're grabbing the name correctly, but it's not grabbing the image correctly, apparently. So let's go ahead and print out what this is coming through as, just to make sure. Okay, so it does come back that the image is 1, as you can see here, and then we get the array. So maybe it was just an issue that one time around. Okay, yep. Now that seems to be working. Okay, so as you can see, as we load up our application, we get our album, and we get everything working correctly. I'm gonna just add another album just to see how that would look. I'll be right back. And adding another album is just as simple as that. So hit save. Now we have another album, album 2. It's using a different image. And let's go back to our application, build and run this again. Something else that I would like to work on maybe into the future is adding a snapshot listener. That way, anytime something changes here in the background, it also updates in the foreground here. Let me see. That didn't seem to work as it should. Well, that time it did load album 2. So for some reason, the change isn't instantaneous. I don't know why. But it does work just the way that it should. And we have our album images loading up and everything is looking just fine. All right, so there you guys have it. This stuff that we're learning right now could be applied into any different application. I really like this though. Kind of looks nice and it's a fun way to get it done. So tomorrow we're gonna actually start working with some audio files so that we can actually start playing music. And so I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.